The longer we drive, the higher our chances for encountering driving environments that'll involve skills we don't normally use. Having these abilities may not help you out of a ticket or lower your insurance rates, but they could save lives, including yours, which actually would help your insurance rates after all. In this segment, we're going to learn some of the skills needed for difficult driving environments. We'll identify the environments and how they affect us and our vehicles. And then we'll look at methods for minimizing their impact on us. First, we'll examine driving in bad weather. Then we'll look at driving in congestion. Following that, we'll study the issues that come with driving in different types of areas, like city and urban driving, rural settings, and expressways. We'll move from there into driving in reduced visibility conditions, like on hills, in fog, and on curves, as well as lighting conditions. Finally, we'll finish this segment with a short cross-section on conditions of the roadways themselves. Before we get too far, though, let's talk about our vehicles for a moment. Preparation is the key, starting with your vehicle. The last thing you want on a July day is to be somewhere between Marfa and Van Horn with a blown radiator. When you're expecting to be driving in bad weather conditions, make sure that your vehicle is up to it. Whether we're talking about driving in hot weather or cold, in rural Texas or the Metroplex, probably the most important key to your vehicle is making sure its fluids are well maintained. This includes motor oil, transmission and power steering fluid, and brake fluid, and windshield wiper fluid. Even if it's cold outside, your vehicle needs a full radiator. Some people don't understand that engine coolant and antifreeze are essentially the same thing. So not only does antifreeze cool the car in the summer, but having it in your cooling system can keep the liquid in the system from freezing and breaking the engine block if the water were to freeze. You also always want to keep an eye on your tires. Even with brand new tires, icy and wet roads can be dangerous, and a tire's effectiveness goes down drastically if the tire is worn. Baldness and underinflation can be deadly. Once a month, check the tread and the pressure of your tires, and rotate and replace them as needed. Also, be sure to keep your spare tire and jack in good condition, in case of an emergency. If you drive in icy winter conditions a lot, consider going to a true winter tire in the winter. In the olden days, winter tires always looked, rode, and sounded like something on an army transport truck. But that's not true anymore. Many large tire shops also often have deals on dedicated winter tire and wheel combinations. Heat can affect tires as well. And because of its composition, asphalt absorbs a lot of heat. Its dark color doesn't reflect the light back into the environment, but instead it stores it all as heat. Along with its color, asphalt is dense, which means it retains that heat for a longer period of time. On a hot summer day, the asphalt can be 40 to 60 degrees hotter than the surrounding air temperature. So if you're in Odessa and the thermometer is at 115, your tires are resting on pavement that can be anywhere from 155 to 175 degrees, which is enough to fry an egg, literally. Whether you're in blistering heat or freezing rain, visibility is critical. Grime is building up on your lights all the time, especially during the winter. Not only can it make it harder for you to see, but it can also make it more difficult for other drivers to see you. When you're washing your windshield, it's also a good idea to wash your headlights and tail lights as well. In addition, you want to make sure to replace any lights that aren't working. And now for the weather. The U.S. Department of Transportation says that roughly 25% of all crashes are at least partially caused by bad weather. Fog, wind, rain, poor visibility from blowing sand, road conditions like wet or icy roads are all part of driving in different weather conditions. You've probably never heard anyone say, "Wow, I love to drive through a Texas cyclone." But some of us have probably at least come close. We've already commented about Texas weather. In the summer of 2018, temperatures in Del Rio exceeded 100 degrees for 57 straight days. Dallas saw a 44-day streak of 100-degree heat. A single day during that heat wave saw Austin hit a record 112 degrees, breaking its old record by 5 degrees. Then, just a few months later, on December 13th, 2018, more than 6 inches of snow fell in the San Angelo, Abilene, and Sweetwater area. The half-foot of snow that fell that Thursday prompted state highway officials to close Texas Route 70, just south of Sweetwater. The area was also under heavy wind advisory for 3 days, and winds near Graham were measured above 40 miles an hour. From sand and dust storms to hurricanes, Texas sees more than its fair share of bad weather, and sometimes we have to drive in it. If that's true, then how do we make ourselves safe? The first thing to remember is the same as what I said about our vehicles. Be prepared. There are many times when the weather changes quickly, and taking a moment to think about that has never hurt anyone. It may sound silly, but if there is a chance of severe weather in your area and you don't have to drive, don't. Rescheduling an unnecessary trip or even an appointment is probably better than to risk being stuck on a highway exposed to violent weather. But if you have to drive, do a little planning. When weather changes quickly, slow down. Turn off your stereo and turn on the news. During hazardous changes in the weather, meteorologists will issue warnings frequently. If there are thunderstorms that may spawn tornadoes in the area, news and weather sources may even advise drivers to stay off the road and to seek shelter. There are phone apps that will alert you quickly to changing weather issues. Start looking around you. If you suddenly find yourself staring out your window at a dark and threatening sky and experiencing increasing winds and damage-causing hail, you might be within striking distance for a tornado. There's also a good chance that lightning will be associated with this weather. Experts advise that drivers immediately move away from a tornado at right angles, if possible. But there is disagreement among them as to whether drivers should stay in their vehicle or try to move to safety. In the event you're caught in a tornado's path, as rubble and wreckage begins to fly, it's recommended that you pull off the road, but then leave your car running so that the airbags will still work. Stay in your safety belt and get your head below window level, and if possible, cover yourself with a blanket. If you know a tornado is coming and you think you can safely move to a place significantly below the level of the roadway, like a ditch, experts recommend you leave your car and lie in that area, covering your head with your hands. But this is still a last resort. And your safest move is still to drive to a shelter if possible. Remember though, the bottom line is having as much protection as you can. Obviously, if the wind is already moving the vehicle around, getting out and moving to safety isn't an option. There are many who still believe the old advice about taking shelter under an overpass or a bridge. Here's why that's no longer recommended, and now even cautioned against. When extremely high sustained winds encounter an underpass or a bridge, the air that's forced through them actually gains speed. During a tornado, this means that anything being thrown by that wind increases its speed also. Let's talk for a moment about icy and wet conditions on the roads. There are only a few driving situations where you'll feel as helpless as the instant you go from pavement to ice. The feeling can be so strong that it can momentarily paralyze an otherwise good driver with fear. This is also a place where having some sort of general plan can save you from tragedy. Keep in mind that certain areas are more likely to have ice buildup. They would be locations such as approaches to bridges and overpasses, shaded spots on the highway, and areas where water does not drain well from the roadway. You can be prepared for driving on ice by simply doing things like accelerating slowly, increasing your following distance from other vehicles, and braking gently with slow, steady strokes. Ultimately though, if you drive on icy roads much, there will be that time when you instantly realize that you're no longer in control of your vehicle. Once you realize you're on ice or black ice, the best thing to do is to remain calm and don't overreact. Driving safety experts all give virtually the same advice, and that is to do as little as possible and allow your vehicle to pass over the ice. If you can, don't hit the brakes and try to keep the steering wheel straight. If you feel the rear of the vehicle swing around, gently turn the steering wheel in the same direction as the skid. If you try to turn out of the skid, you risk skidding out or spinning in the roadway. Also remember though, that if you turn into a skid too hard or too far, your vehicle will merely begin to fishtail. Slow down by decelerating. Lift your foot off the accelerator and allow the vehicle to slow as much as possible. And what about anti-lock brakes? There's a general misconception about anti-lock brakes. Anti-lock brakes are not a guarantee that you won't spin or skid. If you've practiced with them and know what to expect from them, they can be life-saving devices. But if you simply think they'll save you from a wreck every time, you're asking for trouble. And if you hit a sheet of ice and jam down on the brake pedal with ABS, you are still going to slide. Anti-lock brake systems are more effective and capable of stopping more quickly than conventional brakes on wet, paved surfaces and on icy or packed snow-covered roads. Also, the stopping distances can be longer on loose gravel or freshly fallen snow, but you experience the lockup of the wheels as with conventional hard braking. Let's finish this segment on bad weather by talking a little about dust storms. Dust storms don't happen a lot in Texas, but they do happen, especially up in the Panhandle and out in West Texas. Dust storms often come on suddenly, with an advancing wall of dust that could be miles long and several thousand feet high. If you see this happening, the safest thing you can do is to get off the road prior to it hitting. Don't wait until you lose all visibility. Once you've pulled off the road, shut off your lights. The reason for this is that in the severely reduced field of vision of a dust storm, other drivers might think that you're moving on the road and run into you. If you're not able to get off completely of the roadway, reduce your speed, use your hazard lights to help avoid collisions, and remember to never stop in the traffic lane. When waiting out a dust storm, leave your radio on. Also, you may have the temptation to get right back on the road, but wait until you have more than 300 feet of visibility all around you. Because of a dust storm's makeup, visibility can go from hundreds of feet to zero in seconds. Most local radio stations will give updates on the storm. Once your vehicle has been through a dust storm, you should have your vehicle thoroughly checked by a mechanic. Dust storms are usually caused by strong thunderstorm winds, so they're often accompanied by a short, heavy downpour. Generally though, dust storms don't last too long, so with patience, they may only be a minor hindrance. Ask any driver what the worst part of driving is, and they probably will answer, you guessed it, congestion. How do we make our commute through congestion better and safer? The first thing we can do to make our driving situations in heavy traffic better is to be concerned about our own driving habits. We've already talked about aggressive driving, but it bears repeating that aggressive driving and weaving in and out of traffic only serves to make things more unsafe for everyone. Remember, you can positively affect traffic flow by keeping a safe distance of at least 3 seconds between you and the vehicle ahead. This helps to avoid frequent braking and rear-end crashes. Pay close attention to the traffic ahead of you. If you have the time, when you see the cars in front of you brake, before you hit the brakes, take your foot off the accelerator to slow down first. Sometimes this is enough, and the person in back of you won't have to slam on their brakes. Use the practice of scanning your eyes from side to side in the roadway ahead, and that of watching what is happening far enough out in front of you that you see potential hazards. Most experts agree that in city and suburban driving and speeds, this means about 3 blocks ahead, and on rural roads and highways, at least a quarter mile ahead. This may sound like too far, but if you're being observant, everything closer than those distances is already in your sight range. At night, the same thought process should be used. We want to see what is at the edge of our headlights, as opposed to looking right in front of our car. If you're only looking 30 feet ahead of your vehicle, by the time you see something, it's literally too late to react. And when you're looking ahead, what should you look for? You can look for vehicles coming onto the roadway, or moving into your lane, or turning. Especially watch for brake lights from slowing vehicles. By seeing these things farther out in front of you, you have more time. And as I said earlier, if you're moving your eyes around, you're being more alert. You're seeing more of the things that could potentially affect you. Even wide open expressways have their own set of problems. Here in Texas, an expressway is defined as a divided arterial highway for through traffic. An expressway has full or partial control of access and generally has grade separations at major intersections. One of the first things to remember about driving on expressway is the rule that the faster your vehicle is traveling, the more time and distance it takes for turning, braking, and stopping. Driving safely means you must constantly adjust your vehicle speed for the roadway and traffic conditions, all while maintaining an adequate following interval and obeying appropriate speed limits and driving laws. Oftentimes, the trick to using an expressway or freeway is found in the process of getting on and off the expressway. To get on an expressway or freeway, you must remember that you have to yield the right-of-way to vehicles already on the highway. Then when you enter the speed change lane, stay to the right, signal left, and when it's clear, increase your speed to merge with the flow of traffic. It's key here to understand that you must bring your speed up to that of the flow of traffic, because if you merge too slowly, you're affecting the traffic flow for everyone behind you. Once you're on the highway, use the right lane to drive at the minimum posted speed limit or below the normal flow of traffic. Then you may use the middle or left lanes to travel faster than other traffic or to pass other vehicles, if you choose to do so. Another excellent rule to remember is to not wait to get into a lane to exit until the last minute. If you know you're going to get off soon, change into the right lane. This not only makes it easier for you, but it also helps maintain the flow of traffic for everyone behind you. Always remember to stay in your lane and not wander. As I said before, don't weave in and out of traffic. Maintain a constant speed and keep good separation between you and the vehicle in front of you. When you're ready to leave the highway, move into the right lane again, well in advance of the exit. The more traffic there is, the earlier you should move into the right lane. Exit signs are usually placed at least 1,000 yards ahead of the exit. Signal in advance of the exit, and then exit the highway at highway speed. Once you're on the exit ramp, begin to slow down to stop or merge traffic with the traffic in front of you. Now, let's talk for a minute about highway hypnosis. Highway hypnosis is also known as white line fever. It is an altered mental state in which a person can drive great distances, all the time responding to external events in a seemingly normal manner, with no recollection of having consciously done so. During this time, your conscious mind is apparently focused somewhere else, while on the surface outwardly processing the information needed to drive. The problem is that highway hypnosis is a trance-like state, and during a state like that, you don't recognize what has happened to you, and your reaction times can slow down significantly. Experts say that there are several things that you can do to help minimize the risk of highway hypnosis. Make sure you're well rested. Call a friend if you have hands-free device and get chatty. If you're with another person who can drive, let them. Take breaks. Find a rest stop. Get out of your car and move around. Something else to think about is that even if you are well rested and alert, chances are some driver around you is not. Be alert and watchful for drivers who don't seem to be paying attention to the driving task. What can also be really tough to deal with is when visibility is reduced in such a way that it affects your ability to drive safely. We spent the last few minutes talking about all the difficult driving environments we experience, but it makes a lot tougher when we can't see. Sometimes it's an issue of our surroundings. For instance, when driving in the hills, or on curves, or with heavy vegetation like in a forest or brushland. When driving in these areas, you have to remember that oftentimes the road edges are much closer to the brush or the trees. This means less time for reaction should an animal step out in front of you. Anticipate this and slow down if possible. It's the same for driving in curves. While our surroundings play a part in making up our driving habits, so does our general environment. It sounds silly, but it's true. Driving in daylight is easier than driving in the dark of night. That's the reason many of our roads here in Texas have one speed for daytime and another slower one for night. Another problem that frequently occurs is when our visibility is seriously reduced by fog. The biggest rule is slow down. Also remember that you should turn on your headlight, but never use your high beams. Using high beams causes a glare, actually making it more difficult for you to see what's ahead of you on the road. Another factor that few people consider for difficult driving situations can be the road itself. Practically every region in America will lay claim to having bad roads, but Texas will always rank right up there with the best of them. Potholes are usually caused by the presence of water in the underlying soil structure and constant traffic passing over the affected area. Combinations of high heat and freezing temperature make the process of growing a pothole go faster. Welcome to Texas. You may not always be able to avoid these alignment-killing road conditions, but there are some things that we can do, at least to lessen their impact. Probably highest on the list is properly inflated tires. Tires are designed to operate within a certain air pressure range. When they're in that range, the chances of surviving a direct pothole hit are much better. Also, try to avoid potholes whenever you can. Sometimes this isn't possible, so make sure you're driving at a reasonable speed over them. Not only can driving over potholes at a higher speed cause damage to your car, it can also cause you to lose control of the vehicle and lead to something worse. This brings us to the conclusion of our segment on special skills for difficult driving environments. The final thought here is that even if you only drive rarely, the chances that you'll encounter one of these tough driving conditions is pretty high. But with a little thought and preparation and some solid basic skills, you'll probably be safer for all those around you. In our next segment, we're going to examine the physical forces that influence driver control.